Hey everybody, good Wednesday evening to you, or Thursday morning, or Wednesday night, whatever it is, whatever time of day. Welcome to the Crazy Gibberish. This is Wastrel Wednesday. I am your smiling, happy, harried host, Bill Sylvie, and coming to us from the land down under, I have the game maestro himself, Mr. Kyle Schuant.
Howdy.
Good to see you, man. How you been?
Good.
Excellent.
Good. Things are slowly opening up here in Melbourne. Slowly opening.
Yeah. I sincerely wish you were in the Melbourne that was like 35 minutes in that direction. It'd make gaming a lot more convenient for me.
Yeah. I don't like hurricanes, though.
Well, at least you can see them coming. People talk about, so many issues, hurricanes and so on in Florida, and I'm like, yeah, but we, unlike tornadoes that hit like that, and earthquakes that hit even faster than that, we got a week, and plus it gives us
usually have a little while for bushfires as well, but
yeah,
lots of people ignore them. The proper thing to do is when you see a trail of smoke over there is to get the hell out. But,
yeah,
a lot of people have this strange thing they want to stay in, stop their property burning down and stuff. It's a bit weird, but there you go.
Yeah.
So they hang around and, Well, there's the occasional crazy dude that does a sightseeing, decides they want to go and see the fires, so they drive towards them and they get to see the fires.
Yeah, I want to watch elephant grass burn.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Florida, we have degrees of Florida native, and by the time you hit my age, you start looking at storms on the NOAA website, and you're just like, hell, that's nothing but a Cat 3. I'm not even going to put the boards up. And you can always spot the newbies, the transplants. They're the ones like madly survival shopping when we've got a claggy like depression that's not even like meriting a name. That's
same for all. It's the same for all disasters. Like here in Melbourne now, with the fourth lockdown, there wasn't quite the same rush on toilet paper there was with the first one.
My God,
people are a bit more prepared, and they're a bit more over it all. It's like, supermarkets will stay open. There's no, and it'll be the only place we're allowed to go. So we just,
we had back in 2004, the 2004 hurricane season. In the space of a couple of months, we got hit by 4 hurricanes.
Oh God!
And when they announced number 3, we were just kind of numb to it, and we're just like, shit, well, okay. We've got 99% of what we need. Just make sure the generator's full up, I guess. And then when they announced number 4, we were just like, all right, do it. Come on. You know what? We're going to put the lawn furniture like up on the roof and just have a party when it rolls in. Fuck it at that point, And it was terrible. But anyway, fortunately, none of that's happening yet, and won't this season. Knock on wood. No, things are pretty chill here.
Well, I was just thinking, taking it to gaming. I'm sure I've read more than one discussion on the internet of someone talking about how to use extreme weather events in their campaign, and I would say, you just don't do it. You don't inflict a hurricane on your poor players.
Yeah,
or an earthquake or something.
Yeah. Okay, you guys are on the wild coast. Everyone in Highport is begging the local temple for purify water and create food and drink spells. The druids are going mad because people keep cutting down sacred groves to make boards to put on their windows. I mean,
Yeah, and what happens when you get those high-level clerical druid spells and they change weather? Does that change the weather somewhere else too, to sort of like balance it out? Like if we create rain here, is there going to be a drought on the other side of the continent?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hurricanes are part of a natural process of air currents. I mean, like, you know, some of the hurricanes this season will literally start as cloudbursts in Morocco, and just gradually meander across the Atlantic and start building strength and everything. So if you're some particularly far-sighted druid, or you're just gonna like fuck the people of the Sand Kingdom across the sea, like, no crops for you guys this year. Sorry. we had a regatta like 10 days after you guys were supposed to have your rain, and I couldn't take the chance. So
So that raises the question: if there's an excess of fireball spells, will that cause global warming in your fantasy world?
Yeah, you'll have to get back with me on that one. I'll let you know.
We calculate the heat put out, and then
if my friend Scott, God rest his soul, were here with us, he would probably start working on that at the drop of a hat. All right.
So, guys, don't have an excess of realism in your game. I mean, I know I wrote a realistic game, but it's only somewhat realistic.
Exactly.
Don't have an excess. Don't get carried away with it.
Well, it's when it comes to realism in games, really the only old game, not, I'm not counting Conflict in this, but the only old game that I want realism out of is Twilight 2000. But if you start poking at Twilight 2000, like the background of the world, it starts to fall apart pretty quick, because the Thanksgiving Day massacre was like 50 cities across the U.S. that got nuked. The Soviets had something like 27,000 nuclear weapons, or no, maybe it was globally there were 27,000, but in the 80s they had the balance of them. They had the larger portion. Ours were smaller and more accurate. Theirs were larger and less accurate and more numerous, because they had to figure 1 in 3 ICBMs probably wasn't even going to make it out of the USSR. They were just going to just plummet back down to Earth anyway. And then of the 2 remaining, there were even odds that the remaining one was going to end up, just plotting some random stretch of land in the U.S. So if they really, really wanted to get, say, Fort Knox, not just for the gold, but for the armor school there, 3 SS-20s. And hey, if all 3 of them hit, then good for them. But the number and yield of the nukes that fall in the Thanksgiving Day massacre that kind of creates the world of Twilight 2000 is fractional. And no offense to any of our Russian or Russian-related viewers of the channel, but yeah, no, I don't think that they have some war plan where it's like, well, we'll just nuke them a little. We'll just nuke America just a little bit and leave enough of their country so they could eventually, over the course of 75 or 100 years, claw their way back.
That's not the Russian way.
That's not the Russian way. That's not.
And Stalin said, "Quantity has a quality all of its own."
One of my summer reads that I'm planning on doing is going back and reading Team Yankee, and there's a rather dryly humorous line where the commander of the titular Team Yankee, an armored fighting company in Central Europe during a largely conventional Third World War in the mid-1980s. He's looking at the position he's been ordered to occupy, and he thought, and he's his thoughts are being reflected in the text of the books, and he's thinking to himself, yeah, I can see some Soviet artillery planner going, yes, I want 3 regiments of artillery to target this sector. Because again, that's the Soviet way. But did you catch any of the shows earlier this week, Kyle?
Yeah, I caught a bit of a couple.
I had an interesting thing happen in the game. For those of you who may not have caught the Tuesday wrap up yesterday. I don't want to redo the whole thing. I don't want to launch into a big discussion and recap of the recap. But the net result is some players may have some infernal entanglements. And one of my players, Alan Grohe, which we've got to get Alan on the show. I think you and I should pick Alan's brain about some Greyhawk. So if you're watching this, Alan, an invite is coming. He recommended a story I could go read about a dungeon master and his group of players, and how over the course of a couple of years his campaign evolved from such a very similar tiny seed. And I've been reading it, and I gotta say, for what amounts to game recaps, it's pretty good Pulp Fiction, actually. I mean, you take it for granted that it's not a professionally published novel. It's, it doesn't have an editor and everything, and it reminds me of a few things as a, God forgive me for giving myself this appellation, professional writer. I swear to God, Kyle, if I ever have to see he sighed, he groaned again, I'm just gonna just write. Oh, and another writer's tip, guys, just because I've been seeing this over and over and over and over and over and over again in these posts. While it's a good story, people do not laugh things. Welcome to my abode, he laughed. Welcome to my abode, he said, with mirth in his voice, or he said mirthfully, or he said jovially. People do not laugh things. And oh my God, it has popped up so many times in this story, and I'm just like,
well, it's just one of those. It's just one of those things. When you become aware of it, you become hyper aware.
When you become aware of it, it's
like if you get a little twist in your sock or something, and you take that shoe off so you can readjust that sock, you then have to do the other sock, don't you? Because there was only a tiny twist that you wouldn't normally notice, but because now you got to take, and you end up with taking all your clothes off and putting them back on again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me, but
no, it's good. It's good pulpy writing, like. Yeah. As internet stuff that I have read, internet fiction that I have read, I would give it a solid B. A being like if a professional novelist sat down and took his book and put it in forum post. This is a solid B, so that's pretty high praise. But the thing that struck me, and if you guys are interested, I'll share the link with you in the comments if you want to go read it for yourself. The thing that struck me was, first of all, this is almost 20 years old, so commenting in the forums and saying, hey, this is pretty cool, odds are the author's not going to see it. But then,
it's like there was I looked at a YouTube clip the other day, and there was somebody's comment, and it was from 9 years ago. And then someone else came in, and a month ago, someone else came and asked him a question going, what do you mean by that? And someone else said, I don't think you're going to get a reply, dude.
No.
It's not.
No, you're not. Christopher Lee House over on Facebook says, The Sleeping Dragon by Joel Rosenberg, 1982. That's not what we're reading, but if you could expand on that, Christopher, I will try and give you a better response. But no, what struck me about this was, so this guy's game, again, this is stuff that's going on in his campaign, and he's translating it to fiction. And certainly there are liberties you take. I mean, if I tried to take the Monday night game or something like that and just said, and then the party went 10 feet down the hall and tapped the floor to see if there were traps. And then they went another 10 feet down the hall. And then they stopped and talked about whether they should go left or right. Clearly you're going to doctor it up. You're going to make it a little more engaging to read. Which, again, is what makes it a good read. So this guy made all these posts, presumably as the games were happening. So 2002, and because he puts in some of the posts, like things that characters do, magic spells, and oh boy, are we going to get back to magic spells. He puts things in the posts about spells that they're using that maybe aren't in the player's handbook or anything. And he he explains it. So it's very clear that he's playing 3rd edition D&D. Even though I think you mentioned early on that these characters started in a 2nd edition game and they ported them over when 3rd came out. So this is right around the time 3rd edition came out, not even 3.5. And what struck me is it's hello, just a passerby, good evening. What struck me is it's the focus of the book is nothing but high-level magic spells being thrown around. If bows are shot, they're shooting magical bolts. They're not just firing arrows. I can count on my hand over the pages and pages and pages of this. And these posts started in 2003. I clicked the last page of the thread, and it's in 2020. So I've got a lot of reading in front of me to do. But over the amount of reading I've done, I'm on page 5 of that now, still back in 2002. I've read maybe 4 or 5 instances of martial combat. The key characters are a paladin, a bard, I'm going to call him a magic user and a druid. I know that magic users went completely fractal in 3rd edition, arcane prestidigitator, alienist, sorcerer, wizard, warlock. They took all the level names of magic user and started splitting them out into their own classes that could do completely different things. The whole story is about people standing around blasting each other with high-level magic spells. Multiple instances of high-level magic spells. Like, shit that you would see in an AD&D game once. Like, Kyle and I would talk about that one time Randy, who was playing the magic user, cast Time Stop. That one time that Bobby Joe playing the illusionist, she cast Prismatic Sphere. One time. These guys, it's like if you've ever read the International Union of Disgusting Characters, which was the original story. It's a humorous tongue-in-cheek story from Usenet from the 80s about. Just go read it. Just look up International Union of Disgusting Characters. You'll see what I'm talking about, guys. It's just page after page after page after page of this character cast this magic spell. This character invoked this. This character warded that. This character bound this demon. This character summoned these.
See, as a player, that's the sort of thing that would just make me want to, run away from the bad guys and then later go and find them in their inn, sneak in at night and cut their throat. Just short circuit all the looking through the books and all the rest.
Well, that's the thing. So I'm going to give an inning. I'm going to forfeit an inning to use a little bit of baseball terminology badly. I'm going to forfeit an inning to the fans, both of them, of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons who are still out there. One of the things that that I saw people who were dissatisfied with 3rd and 3.5 edition were tearing their hair out about was caster supremacy. Fighters don't do shit. It's all about magic in the game. Now, something younger folks might not know, and older folks, something folks in general might not know, is that the system of skills, the D20 system, came from a game that was already written and created called Ars Magica, which is all about high-level wizards dueling each other, rather a lot like you see in this story. if you roll up a character in Ars Magica and you're like, yeah, I use a sword, the game master's going to be like, so the sword casts your spells. It's like your focus for casting spells. Well, I stab people with it. You stab them arcanely.
Well, not quite. Not quite. There's a bit more to it than that. I've played Ars Magica for a bit, but anyway, go on.
But anyway, and something that struck me, it just dawned on me reading this guy's story. And I guess at this point, 21 years on, it's like, oh no, I left my favorite cassette tape in that car that I sold back in 1999. Oh, what are you going to do about it now? Nothing. But there's still enough people playing Pathfinder First Edition and 3.5 and 3.0 that I think my point is valid. And Chris, I see your comments, and I'm going to address those in just a minute. But Chris over on Facebook. Kyle and I have talked about this a lot, and I've talked about this a lot. There is nothing wrong with creating house rules for any version of any role-playing game. I'm probably going to create some armored vehicle combat rules for conflict that are going to make Kyle very angry at me, but I'm going to do it anyway. But the thing is, you cannot rip out and replace a subsystem of rules without understanding what you just did. The people who designed 3rd edition, I honestly, this point leads me to believe that this story leads me to the point where I don't think they understood how Advanced Dungeons and Dragons worked. I honestly don't think they did. Because they made magic in that game, and it carried over to Pathfinder, and it carried over to 3.5. I don't know about 5th edition. I've never played it to a high enough level point to see if caster supremacy was a thing in it, but they made magic so ridiculously overpowered that it leads me to believe that they didn't understand the hows and whys of AD&D's magic system. Because if they had, it wouldn't have continued to get exponentially worse. You know, people say, oh, you have the geometric fighter and the exponential magic user or something like that.
Well, what I would say is many times people create house rules without actually having played the regular rules. I've mentioned this before, but S. John Ross talks about when he was a moderator on the GURPS mailing list, he said he could always tell the difference between the questions that people came up with from having played the game and the questions that people came up with from having read the game. Because sometimes you read through something and it doesn't really make sense, but in play, it works fine. On the other hand, you read through something and it makes a lot of sense, but then in play, it's a complete mess. So really, you have to play it to make sense of it. And then after you've played it for a while, then I think it's fair enough to tune it up to give more of the kind of feel that you want in play. But a lot of people just don't really think of things. So, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons, one thing I see a lot is people talking about, oh, they've got so much treasure. Players have got so much treasure, they don't know what to do with all their treasure. So I put in a magic shop, and now I put in a magic shop. Now they have all these high-powered magic items, and they're going around wiping it out and kicking everyone's ass and wiping them out. And now that they're doing that, they've got even more treasure. They don't know what to do with these guys. And you say, well, but don't they have to spend the treasure to level up? Oh, no, I took that out because that's stupid. So
Exactly what I'm talking about.
They take one thing out, so it leads to a problem, and then they tack on a solution, which leads to another problem, and so on. Whereas if they just left that in, at least in the first few levels, there isn't a problem of an excess of treasure. In fact, in many cases, because, for example, thieves only need 1250 XP to go up to the first level, and it costs 1500 gold pieces at least for them to go up levels, they'll have a little period where they're stuck and they can't level up until they get more treasure. So you'll get that sort of situation more often than not in the earlier levels. And as well, anytime anyone has to pay to have a limb magically restored, or pay to get a level back or something like that, because they'll have level drain. And, the rust monster will eat their plate mail and that sort of thing. So if you just have the regular ones, you find that an excess of treasure isn't really an issue until they get up to around 7th or 8th level. But by that stage, they're probably saving up so that at 9th level, they can build that stronghold, clear the surrounding hexes of monsters, and establish themselves as a lord. And then you've got a different kind of game where you no longer, piles of treasure aren't a goal. They're a means to the end of hiring armies and conquering other lords, and it's a different game in that.
Yeah.
So that's just one example, and a very clear one, that someone changes something, they see something they think looks stupid. Why would you have them pay to level up? Why would I rate them on there? Why would you have them pay to level up? Well, because if they don't pay to level up, then they accumulate all this treasure, and then you try to take it off them by giving them magical shops and selling them magical weapons and things, and then they start blasting through the game universe like nobody's business, and it's just a mess. So how about just play the rules as they are to start with? And the other aspect, of course, of leveling up is, you get people say, they've got alignments, but they just ignore them. They have this guy and he's got a thief and he keeps charging at a battle and then complaining when he gets killed. And you have this guy who's a fighter, who's a bit of a coward, and he won't fight. And, well, also, in the leveling up, they had a thing where you'd rate their role-playing, how well they role-played their character. It wasn't a Thespy sort of thing, but fighters fight, thieves thieve, magic users cast magic, and so on. Yeah. That they've got their roles, and you'd rate them 1 to 4, with 1 being the best rating and 4 being the worst. And that would be a multiplier. So to go from 1st to 2nd level, if you're a really good player, it would be level rating 1, and so it costs you 1500 gold and cost you 1 week of time. And if you're really terrible, it would take 4 weeks and 6,000 gold. So this acted as an incentive for players to play better, and many game masters didn't like that. I don't want to rate the players. It could be a little bit uncomfortable, I understand. But when you don't rate the players, then you will get the fighters who hang back and don't fight. You will get the thieves who charge into battle and so on. So I find just making the players aware of the system makes them consider their play a bit more carefully without even having to rate them very much.
Oh, it absolutely does. And it just... I just looking at reading this guy's fiction, as good as it is. I mean, I've got to put out of my mind so I can keep enjoying it, that this is really kind of the way that latter-day D&D, and again, I don't know about 5. I have played some 5, but not to the point where you got, and AWIG 8103 said it's linear fighter quadratic wizard. I happen to think that fighters and magic users, and I hate using this word, you guys are never going to hear me say this word too often in a positive way, but in AD&D, fighters and magic users are actually pretty balanced. Okay, the magic user can drop a couple of fireballs. We're in a 10-foot wide, 10-foot high, 100-foot long hallway. You're going to barbecue us? And certainly there are things you can put in the way to interdict the magic, but the point is the magic user is going to be very limited. A fighter is never gonna run out of sword to cast. If you catch my drift, a thief is never going to exhaust his find traps.
Well, you know me, I don't believe in game balance.
I don't either. I don't either.
And it occurs to me as we're discussing this, one of the good things about game imbalance is that it encourages teamwork. If that wizard has 1 hit point, then the fighter needs to stand in front of you. So it comes back to that: are you fulfilling your role? Fighters fight, magic users cast magic, and so on.
Yes.
If the magic user has 1 hit point and armor class 10, the fighter's got to stand in front of him. Otherwise, 1 hit and he's gone, and he'll be very easy to hit.
Yeah.
If the magic user has 10 hit points and AC 5 at level 1, the fighter doesn't have to stand in front of him. And so then you'll get fighters who do not fight.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get wizards who do run into battle.
Yeah.
So having game imbalance encourages the group to work together, for everyone to have their little role and fulfill that role. It makes them work together. Whereas if they're all equally stars, they don't even need to be in a group. The player can run off by themselves having adventures and split the party in that, which, aside from what it does tactically, it's really boring. We don't want to, sit there and watch everyone else play every week for 4 hours. We want to be able to play ourselves, or we want to play together. So if you have game balance, that leads to a lot of boring play. Whereas if you have game imbalance, that leads to players thinking, shit, how can I keep this guy alive? Now I'm starting to get whittled down, but I still have to keep this guy alive. What am I going to do? So it leads to players working together and really exploring their role of how can I be the best magic user I can be, how can I be the best fighter I can be, and so on. So this comes back to what we were saying before, that house rules are good, but play it straight first, as much as you can, because famously there's no consistent initiative rules in AD&D. But play it straight as much as you can, and then see how it works. And then when you see how it works and how all the different elements work together, then if you feel you should, then start tinkering with it to give exactly the kind of game that you want. So, and because otherwise you end up with like this thing of just the edition grind, multiple editions. And that's avoided. So I was saying to Bill the other day, there's this thing of when you've written an essay at uni and you look at it and you say, yeah, that's pretty good, but just tinker with it a little bit more, it'll be perfect. And then you tinker with it more and you completely fuck it all up. It's a complete mess now. The same thing happens if you write a game book. Talked about this on Ishiro's podcast, advice about game design. One of the things was an excess of humility. Do I have anything to offer? Yes, you do. Go ahead and do it. And also wanting to make it perfect. And I said, that's sort of perfectionism, but not quite. And so I said to my psychologist gamer friend, Ramon, and he said, it's just avoidance. It's classic avoidant behavior. Because if you never finish it, then you never ship it, and you're then not subject to failure. If you never try, you can't fail if you don't try. So it's classic avoidant behavior. I would suggest that the edition grind is avoidant behavior too. You get these game masters who are always looking for the next supplement, their next game edition, and then sitting there tinkering with their notes, rather than just sit down with your snacks and your mates and play the game.
Yes. Just
go ahead and give it. It's avoidant behavior, the fear of failure. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't worry. Go ahead, fail.
Yep.
We'll all have a laugh if you fail.
Exactly.
At least you provide amusement. Like you said about, as a kid, sending the module to TSR.
Yeah.
If for nothing else, the guy who read it had a laugh.
And thus it fulfilled... What is the purpose of a role-playing game? To entertain people. And parts of, a module is a part of a role-playing game, and I'm sure it entertained someone at TSR. Therefore, I succeeded. I would have liked a rejection letter, but that's life. So Chris is burning up the comments over on Facebook, and I wanted to give him his due. He was talking about a crossover of The Sleeping Dragon by Joel Rosenberg. It's among the few well-written crossovers of the era. College kids are transported to the fantasy world as their characters. Sounds a bit like Quag Keep or the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. Could be a fun read. And he mentions, just because you're a good or even great game manager doesn't mean you're a good writer, and vice versa. Well, I think that's true.
Yes.
And yes. I think our hobby is burdened with too many soi disant authors
soi disant
who have dragged players along behind them. That is just, it's like, come and see the fantasy world that I've created. Okay, I'm going to go to the tavern and pinch some nice fat wench's fanny. Oh, there are no taverns here, adventurer. That's not... that your character wouldn't do that.
The closest I've come to that was when I was 15 years old, GMing my friend Peter DeCruz, and I teleported him into the dungeon because he didn't want to go. Sorry, Peter, if you're watching.
Chris has got a... Oh my gosh, he's running a third of the show for us, Kyle. We're just going to go on Chris's content here. This is great. He says, in the U.S. Army, when he was in first cav, they used Twilight 2000 as a sand table for dealing with an armor encounter. Once I got the officer to understand the roleplay elements, it changed our whole mentality about combat engagement. Not that it was real, but it helped us answer the big question, what would I do? Not that when we got to combat we did that, but it helped to visualize and come to terms with that. That's an interesting approach, though, man. And he says, I ran 5e since 2014. Wow, for 2,500 hours, man. That's a job, by the way. What is it, like 2,800 hours in a year is a 40-hour-a-week job or something like that. But it's been 2014, so a part-time job. I ran D&D at a public library 3 times a week. It's okay for an introductory RPG. Then we would slip to other games like Dungeon World, Blades in the Dark. But it was great commercial to introduce middle school kids to, and even a few adults. Well, whatever trail of breadcrumbs you want to put down to get people to play. I mean, Kyle and I are, we'll Shanghai people. Just like, we'll grab people and put them in a headlock and say, we're playing OD&D. Original Dungeons and Dragons. And it usually works. But yeah, I mean, if you've got people who want to like ease into it, and a number of people who've come to my table and probably Kyle's as well at events, their experience is with insert new edition of D&D here. Mm-hmm. So, it's when your baby is 5 months old and sitting in the high chair for the first time, you give them a fingernail-sized blot of baby applesauce to try. You don't cut off a piece of your New York strip steak and hold it out on a fork to him, right?
That's what I did wrong with my son. That's why I like meat too much now.
Oh my God. Robert comments, 5e is a version of D&D that you can run successfully if you put the right ingredients into it. And that's one thing, that is something I will give 5e, unlike 4e and absolutely unlike 3e. I play tested 5e, and I owned a lot of 5e books for a while. I didn't just discard them out of, I don't want these. I literally needed money. And I knew somebody his son really wanted to play 5e, so, so I don't have it anymore. But the one thing I remember from looking at 5e, the playtest materials, back when they started with the playtest, it seemed to me, looking over the rules, reading over the rules, and understanding, because I'm not going to be hypocritical. I'm not going to say, you shouldn't just tear stuff out of a rule set that you don't understand. You'll break the whole game. I tore stuff out of 5e before I even started because I wasn't going to bother with their crap. That's not what I'm saying. But I felt as though there were many things that I could drop into that I could sprinkle into a 5e game. And indeed, Kevin, a friend of mine, ran a 5e game, and I said, hey, I think the system is flexible enough to tolerate this. Can I run a 1e AD&D Ranger? And I did, and it worked fine. It just, nothing broke in 5e when I ran a first edition AD&D Ranger. The monsters were a little tougher. It made it a little bit more... I had to be a little more sprightly, let's say. But other than that, I will give 5e that. I will give 5e that. So maybe, in that they fixed it.
See, I don't think it's necessarily a good advertisement to, as Wig says, you can totally tear stuff out of 5e and it won't break the game. Everyone plays 5e, uses optionals like they're standard. I don't think it's a good advertisement to the game for a game to say, if you change it enough, you'll like it. Why don't get one that you like to begin with?
Yeah,
that used to be the thing I struggled with for a while. They called it Man in Black, where you for Steve Jackson games, where you go around, you do demo plays for people of the game system and that. And I was saying that for a bit of time, like, yeah, you could fiddle with GURPS to make it like what you want and that, and you could ignore this and play that and that. But then it occurred to me that if I was ignoring 80% of it anyway, why not just play a different game? I'm a bit slow. It sort of takes a while to occur to me. But yeah, I don't think that's a good advertisement for a game. That, if you fiddle with it enough, it's good.
Yeah. Or
it's what you want it to be. How about get one that is what you want it to be to start with, like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition.
Exactly. So my buddy Jeff, if you're watching this, man, I love you to pieces. Don't take this the wrong way, but I mean, he was such an evangelist for Hero System and still is. And back in the day when I first started gaming with him, I talk about, like, I wanted him to play in our Mech Warrior games, and he was like, why don't we play this? And there was the Hero System rules called Robot Warriors. And it was just Hero System definitions of giant robot, stompy, battle mech stuff. And I mean, to me, Hero System is like, you see these advertisements all over town and TV. Hey, come into our dealership. You can get like the sexiest, sleekest sports car, or the roughest, toughest SUV, or the biggest, most comfortable plush family car. Just come on down, and you go down and you put your down payment on the thing, and they say, we'll deliver it to your house. And then the next morning, a dump truck pulls up and tips its load pan and literally dumps a heap of car parts on your yard, and they throw a set of wrenches out, and they're like, good luck.
That's the classic. They used to say that'd be good for. Oh, it's not really. It's a toolkit to make the kind of game you want. It's fuck off. Yeah. Just give me the game. No, it's like I go back to these simple games. Chess, 1 page of rules, played for 1,000 years. People play it as a job, for God's sake. It's their full-time job to play chess.
Yeah.
There's been a whole TV series made about it, about a chess protege.
Yeah.
The janitor teaches her, and she's a genius, orphan, and
multiple
rags to riches, and it's like, and that's 1 page of rules, man. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah.
Nobody goes, oh, here's your chess toolkit.
Yeah. Here's a slab of wood, here's a chisel, here's some paint, some black and white paint.
Yeah, and if you do it right, you can make it like checkers if you want. Just play checkers. Yeah. Let's play backgammon, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
And Robert follows...
Look, there's over 1,500 games out there. You can find one that matches what you want without having to mess with it.
Even if what you want is to build things, there are system in GURPS. But it's like, I don't like to cook every night. I like to look in the fridge and see what's in there. or go to the store and get like a roast chicken and some vegetables from the and mashed potatoes from the deli and bring it home and put it on a serving platter and say, dig in, guys.
Yeah.
So I don't like to GURPS and Hero System dinner all the time. And Robert says, Kyle is right. If 5e is all things to everyone who plays, then it is harder to find players that fit your own playstyle. I had a lot of dissatisfied modern story gamers, but I did manage to train a couple brand new players to old school style D&D. We're moving on to original, and this week I'm running DCC for the first time. Hey, that's great, man. Cheers to you.
So that's a really good point Robert brings up, that like if a game really is that flexible, it can have so many play styles, then when you get players for it, they'll come with rather different expectations and maybe a bit disappointed when they come to your game table, because they were expecting their version of D&D or GURPS or whatever, and now they got yours. You know, what? What's going on here? Why is everyone chucking fireballs around, or why aren't they chucking fireballs around?
Yeah.
They can get rudely disappointed. So, yeah.
Let's see. Awig says, everyone I know that plays 5e uses optional house rules like their standard. And it would be worse since the game was designed to work without those optional rules. Yeah, I liken it to a helicopter. It's like, you know, somebody sees a helicopter for the first time, and it's what's called your standard helicopter is what's called a penny farthing. Big rotor, penny, little stabilizer rotor, farthing. And they see that spinning tail rotor and they're like, God, that's dangerous. Take that off there. Well, it needs it to fly. Well, we can come up with something better. And then, you know, they got some, you know, they put some giant stabilizer wing back there, and then they're like, well, now the helicopter's tail heavy. We got to put a bigger engine in. Well, it doesn't generate as much lift. Now we have to stick little winglets on the side. Well, that just makes it heavier. Let's put bigger wings on the side, and why don't we rotate the big rotor to the front? Well, congratulations, you just invented a goddamn airplane. When what you wanted was a helicopter.
It's that avoidant behavior too. It's like those who haven't seen it should go and look up the movie Pentagon Wars. Particularly anyone who's been in the military or in the government at all will be very familiar with the process.
No,
in that they talk about the evolution of the Bradley fighting vehicle.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. Okay. Everybody, watch that movie, but understand that it is a comedic lie. Now you may continue, Kyle.
Yeah, well, it's a comedic lie, but it has the essential truth that that if you're working on a project, everyone will want to have their say and everyone will want to add a feature, and the features contradict each other and things don't work terribly well. And then they complain that they don't work terribly well and say, why did you ask that? Why do we have this feature? Well, sir, because you asked for it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So in that movie, the depiction is that they make the Bradley fighting to be a troop transport, and then someone says, can't it be a scout? So it go faster. But if it's a scout, then it needs more weaponry, and if it's got more weaponry, then it's got these anti-tank missiles. Now there's not enough room for as many men, so now we cut down on the number of men. Now it's got the anti-tank missiles. Now it looks a bit like a tank. People will shoot at it, so now it needs more armor, but that'll slow it down, so it doesn't work as a scout anymore. Blah blah blah. Now the exact truth of the exact process or whatever, it's kind of irrelevant to the point that happens in a lot of big projects. Yeah. In government and the military, where friends I've shown it to who work in IT say that's exactly what happens with software. So people want you to add features.
We call it feature creep.
Yeah, and I think the same thing can happen to a role-playing game, and that's why when I wrote Conflict, and when I gave myself a strict page limit of 48 of these digest-sized pages. To limit it, because there's always stuff that you can add. There's always more to add, but it comes back to that saying that a thing is complete not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. So you cut it down to its real guts, and if you really want to add features, there's always flat books, I suppose, but I don't recommend them. So, yeah, so that's the point. And I think that ultimately leads to, because the weight of all the splat books just builds up until somebody says, it's so complicated, let's just make a new edition. And then they make a new edition and it's slimmed down. It's still larger than the first one was. And then it builds up again and then collapses down into a new edition and so on. The process is just endless. And, 100 years from now, there'll be D&D 102nd edition and it'll be 1,000 pages just for the fighter's handbook. It's
that, or you'll just have a whole board in your head and just plug a network jack in and say, have you got your D&D jack installed? D&D 405th edition. I know you got the 404th edition back here, but it's not compatible.
I'm just going to mental pictures of Keanu Reeves going this. Some of you will have seen Johnny Mnemonic, where it's a cyberpunk future, and Keanu Reeves is a guy who transports data in his head. They stick a computer chip in his head or something. I can't remember. And when they load up the data, it hurts his brain. So he gets to do some of that excellent Keanu Reeves acting that he does.
Yes. Now,
Paul says feature creep. Just look at Star Citizen. Backed it for a modern Wing Commander sequel, but they need a persistent world and mechanics for running around and shooting on foot.
Yeah.
I think that's happening to a lot of games, Paul. So there was Elite Dangerous for many years, where you just flew around and blew up other ships and did trading. And people said, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be able to get out of your ships? And they went, oh, yeah, okay, you can get out of your ship in a vehicle and explore on the ground in a vehicle. Okay, well, if we can get out of if we can get out in a vehicle, can't we get out of the vehicle? And they go, oh, no, it's too complicated. And then No Man's Sky came out, which was just you flying around in your ship and then getting out of it and exploring on the ground and doing mining and stuff in your little spacesuit. And they go, well, these guys do it with like 1/10 the studio. Why can't you do it? And they go, no. So they've been working on it, and now you can get out. And apparently, it's buggy as all hell. And
yeah, I remember seeing some like early demos of the first person on foot portions of Star Citizen, and oh my god, it's like it was pure jank. And even back then, even almost 10 years ago, like, okay, I'm not a programmer, so me saying it's super easy to code a first-person shooter should be taken with a grain of salt. But it really is super easy to code a first-person shooter. I mean, I have a Microsoft QBasic, which was the basic that came with DOS, raycasting engine demo, which is a first-person Wolfenstein 3D-like thing. And it's written in BASIC. And Chris Roberts, who designed all of the Wing Commander games and himself wrote the code for at least the first two and all their expansions, yeah, the the first-person segments were for Star Citizen, and it may have changed because again, this was quite a while ago. Yeah, they were super duper janky. So, anyway, let's chatter over on Facebook. Chris says he loves Castles and Crusades and DCC, both fine games. Alma Mater was a game Robert and Chris are talking about. It was Errol Otis, the guy that did this. Errol Otis designed Alma Mater, and it is a how shall we say, tongue-in-cheek role-playing game set in high school, where you can join gangs, sell drugs, have sex with your boyfriend or girlfriend, trade sexual favors to teachers and other school staff. Good fun, red-blooded, all-American stuff. It is very out of print, by the way. If you can lay your hands on a copy for cheap, you've got something there. But it's yeah, it is it's a heck of a thing. So anyway, now that we've solved all of the problems in the world with gaming, again, you guys really, honestly, are blessed to be here because we've fixed role-playing games forever.
Telling you how to do things.
Exactly. Because nobody in the world can fix things like a couple old middle-aged guys complaining about it. That is how the world works.
Yeah. Exactly. The only way it could be better is if we were sitting on our porch with a couple of beers.
Exactly. You know what the problem in this world is today, Kyle? I'll tell you. There's lack of respect from kids. And then, we'd fix that too.
There's a Batuta Advocate article about that. It's like the Aussie Onion, and it says, guy at barbecue who says he doesn't know much about politics, but really doesn't know much about politics.
Yeah.
But we know about gaming, at least.
We know about
gaming.
Chris says, so what is your game? So, Chris, if you're directing that at Kyle, Chris over on Facebook comments, Kyle has written a fun little game of modern combat titled Conflict. And you can pick that up at, I'm going to scroll up here. I'm going to find Kyle's link instead of searching. Here we go.
If you look at the YouTube feed, Bill's posted a link there.
So yeah, you can, or you can order it from RPG Now. You can order it straight from Lulu. I'm pasting up the Lulu link right now in YouTube. But if you go to the YouTube feed, you can see it in the description. And I think it's actually in the Facebook description too. But you can get it from Lulu. You can get it through DriveThruRPG. And Christopher says, "I'm sitting here waiting for you to sell your game." So, well, what does sell a game these days?
Well, we wanted to play the game because poor Bill, every Monday night, game mastering for 38 people in his game group, or however many he's got. He's a bit always the bridesmaid and never the bride. Always the game master, never the player.
Yes, so, I have a revolving door like a New York City skyscraper. With I got so many people coming and going in my game, but go buy yourself a copy of Lulu real quick, and you guys can follow on with tonight's game where I at least try not to commit war crimes. Although I'm a contractor, I technically can't be prosecuted under the Hague Committee for
immunity from prosecution.
It's not a war crime if I'm not a soldier, right? Is that how that works?
No, it's just an ordinary crime then.
Oh well.
Also, if you're not in uniform, you can be shot for espionage or sabotage. But anyway. So Conflict. I copied the format of Old Classic Traveller because I think that's a good format, because it's something that can fit in a cargo pants pocket or very easily into a bag without sort of too much shuffling around. And 48 pages. When you constrain yourself like that, you deal with that avoidance thing of being scared to finish a product because then you might fail. And it's the adventure game of modern warfare, so it's designed to resolve tactical situations in police special action, counterinsurgency, and post-apocalyptic sort of situations as well. And the default is gritty realism. So when I write the referee's book, I'll add some stuff in for more cinematic stuff if you want to be more Jason Bourne than Spooks, for example. But that's the default. So the setting for Bill, so as to avoid offending anyone's, I'm less worried about offending people on an ethnic basis and more worried about offending people on a realism. But no, the corner store is not actually on that street. It's on the other side of the street. Set in there's a fictional world. Like Recon did it. Recon didn't have the United States and Vietnam. They had stateside and Nam. So it's completely fictional. There's the Republic of Frankistan, which is a former Soviet republic.
In the capital city of Das Kapital.
Yeah, of course, because it's got a lot of association with communism as well. This former Soviet republic fell into violent chaos, and the world, ignoring Russia's sphere of influence demand, stepped in. There's an international peacekeeping force which is supposed to have 50,000 men, but actually has about 11 or 12,000. So it's undermanned, and they have very strict rules of engagement, so they can't do anything. And there's the Frankistan Assistance Force, the FAF, and they're an international force that can be a bit more aggressive compared to the United Nations one. So there are, of course, Americans there because they like doing aggressive military action, and there's the usual, the ones that they drag along with them all the time, the Australians and the British, and even, God help you, a few French.
It's a coalition of the willing. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Coalition of the willing always sounded like a bunch of... It sounded like slut shaming to me, but anyway.
Yeah, the coalition of the willing, and I say this as an American and a fairly conservative guy, was always a lot like, showing up at the neighborhood barbecue and your wife has got like the giant oversized sunglasses on, even when she's indoors, and you can just see a little faint bruise that they're covering up. Oh no, she wants to be here.
No, it made me think more of the large glass bowl with all the keys tossed into it.
Yeah.
That's all. But anyway, so there's these guys there, and they're also undermanned. And it's all a delicate balance because of the usual counterinsurgency considerations. Plus, it's a former Soviet republic, so there's the Russians just sort of looking across the border, peering across with their binoculars, waiting for an excuse to go in, and everyone else trying not to be too provocative, lest it start World War III.
Yeah.
So it's a counterinsurgent.
Yeah, the Russians absolutely don't want or need more UN hegemony literally right out their kitchen window.
Yeah. So that's the setting, Frankistan, and it is run by Dr. Sir Field Marshal President for Life Frank, who was democratically elected in the last elections. And those last elections did not have a secret ballot, because you only need a secret ballot in a country where people are afraid to speak their mind. But because we are a free country, you just go up and you put your piece of paper in the box of the guy that you want to vote for. And then after the elections, we just weigh all the boxes, and whichever one weighs the most, that guy won. So, because it's a true democracy, so they don't need secret ballot. So, in other words, he's a Western puppet. So,
but he's hashtag our guy.
Yeah. He may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch.
Yes.
So, and the theory is that if you do eventually bring stability to the country, then you can have some real democracy and stuff, and things will be genuinely better for the people. So, Bill's character is a contractor to the FAF, the Frankistan Assistance Force. So they basically got an intelligence headquarters that flies drones around and sees what's going on and that, and they're trying to disrupt the various insurgent groups. Now there's about 20 different insurgent groups, but the most threatening one at the moment, or the one they're most worried about, is the Squad of Righteous Fury, and they're most worried about them because they're not a religious-based or ethnic-based group. The religious or ethnic-based ones, they have kind of limited appeal, because unless you're that particular religion or ethnicity, you don't like them. And most of those religious and ethnic-based groups, they're not trying to control anything more than their current valley. They're not trying to take over the state. But the Squad of Righteous Fury is trying to take over the state. They're a secular group, but they're just as willing to be murderous. A few weeks back, somebody stopped a truck bomb that was going to a market. The force tipped them off, and so it was just 2 police officers got killed instead of 100 people in a marketplace. So they're willing to do horrendous things, but they're not religious or ethnic based, so they've got a bit broader appeal. And they're fairly well organized as well. So they're supported by the Russians. We don't know how much they're created by the Russians and how much they're directed by the Russians, but they're certainly supported by them.
Less ISIS, more Shining Path.
Yeah, exactly. So they're considered to be more of a danger compared to the other groups. The other groups, you could eventually, like that local warlord, you could just make him a general or a minister or something like that and give him a nice pension and a little palace to live in, and he'll probably, come into the fold. But these guys, no, they will not deal with the government. They loathe them, and they will fight on forever, or so they think. So here's Bill's little team, shared in the screen share there. Here's Bill's little team.
You make sure everyone can see that. Okay.
4 guys there. There's those 4 guys, and then there's a couple of just generic commandos in the front. Here's Bill himself, Lieutenant Walters. And as a second, there's Alan Sumarwata. And then there's Daniel McPherson, Sullivan Stapleton, Warren Brown, and Roxanne McKee. And they've all got different abilities. They're not all like hardcore commando types. Lieutenant Walters himself, well, you tell them about his background. Go. Yep.
He's former military, U.S. Army, not your S4 operator kind of guy, but can definitely do the job as necessary. Did a good hitch. I think it was 12 years. Was it 12 years?
18 years.
That's right. Okay. It was 18 years. So he's been in unfriendly sandy spots on the globe before a couple of times. Just a basic no nonsense kind of guy, laconic. Because aren't all government hired former military contractors laconic? Not too quick to anger, but is not afraid of bending the rules to pull off a dirty trick. Good observer of behavior, of individual behavior, and sort of reading people. And that's something he prides himself on, because the one guy who's standing in the market square when you're hungry.
The character sheets are fairly simple. I won't try to share another one. Last time I tried to share multiple screens on Discord, it crashed. So, but the character sheets are relatively simple. It might just look something like a 112. So the stats are social, health, and education, and they're just rated 0 to 3. Shit, suck, good, great. And then there's a rating called readiness, which is how quick you are to act in combat, and also how many actions you get. And that's also rated 0 to 3. So your common citizen has 0. So, if there's a car accident or something, they just stand there filming on their mobile phones. They don't do anything. The person who has a bit of combat training or a bit of experience of violence and trauma in their life, like someone growing up on the mean streets, they might have a readiness of 1. And then there's someone who's got training and experience, readiness of 2. And then your special forces, really super experienced guys, are like number 3. And that's how many actions you get in a combat round.
And that, I put it on the monitor there in Notepad. That is my stonking great character sheet.
Yeah, and that's an unusually long one because he had, 18 years of service. So that's an unusually long one. Most people have 2 or 3 terms. So it's like a traveller with terms at 4-year terms. Most people have 2 or 3 terms, and so they'll have 3 or 4 skills apart from languages. 3 or 4 skills listed. It doesn't have to be very long. And things that aren't listed, essentially everything you can do. So my game philosophy, for those who don't know, is that the skills don't represent what you can do. Anyone can do just about anything, but the skilled person is the person who can do it well and or quickly. So anyone can bash in a door. Given enough time and effort, anyone can bash in a door. The tricky part is doing it quickly So like the guys with the ram, or doing it well. So doing it without smashing the lock, like the locksmith does. So that's the tricky part. But anyone can smash in a door given enough time and effort and being willing to make enough noise and so on. And the same goes for most other skills. The reason that combat is such a delicate thing is that you always have to do things quickly and well in combat. You don't have a choice. You may have a choice about how you open that door or how you fix the car or whatever, but in combat you have to do things quickly or well. Otherwise you die or you have to surrender or whatever. So that's my game philosophy. So just because the skill isn't listed, it doesn't list basket weaving. Well, look, if he sits there all day with YouTube tutorials and his wicker and whatever, he'll figure out his basket weaving. It won't be particularly beautiful or whatever, but he'll be able to do it. So just because the skill isn't listed doesn't mean the person can't do it. So that's my game philosophy, and that, because I always hated that when you're playing a game and like, no, but that's a short sword and you've got long sword skills. Oh, for God's sake, it's right. I can't be bothered with all that. So
we'll give Gary a pass for having short sword and long sword proficiencies separate. Well, I will.
Yeah, we will.
Stunning silence there from Kyle. I'm going to be nice about it.
Well, we will, but I mean, because you had the non-proficiency penalty, which for fighters was -2 or something, and then for magic users it was -5. So the fighter could still do it because you're a 5th level fighter. You've effectively got +5 compared to being a 0 level fighter. +5 -2. It's still you're still pretty good.
Right.
You're still going to be better if you're a 1st level fighter. If you're a mid-level fighter with a weapon that you're not proficient in, you're still going to be better than a wizard is, or even a 1st level fighter with any weapon at all. So that doesn't really worry me. I'm not too worried when there's just a slight difference in abilities. Right. It's when no, you can't do that at all, or when you're more useless with it than a person who just picks it up off the street. That's where it gets stupid.
Oh, that goes back to I was just going to say that goes back to our design discussion earlier. Roll20 or Roll20 D20/3rd edition said, now you have skills to do all those things you were wondering about in D&D. Now you're telling me that because I don't have swim, I'm going to step into a lake and just plummet to the bottom.
And just sink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christopher, a little tongue in cheek, real quick. Christopher said, "Are you going to add rules for air combat because we need those UFO encounters? We need random UFO encounters." So,
well, they could be in the vehicle combat rules. We'll write up later, but in general, I think my feeling is vehicle combat. It's like starship combat in the sci-fi games. It's not a big priority to me because the whole team's in the vehicle or on the starship, and if you lose, the whole team dies. Whereas in personal combat, just some of you die and the game goes on. Right. But in starship combat, it gets blown up, everyone dies, and that's the end of the campaign. Roll up new characters.
That never seemed to be a problem for your group playing Traveler, Kyle. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, they still engage in ship-to-ship combat. It's not too bad in classic Traveller because it's kind of attritional. It's not all or nothing. It's kind of attritional, just like little bits ablate off the ship, and so bits get wrecked, and so eventually you can't fight on or you give up. So it's not too bad as long as everyone's wearing vac suits.
Plus, at least one person at the table needs to understand trig, and who the fuck has time for that? It's like, an Imperial gunship pulls into your sector. Are you gonna fight? Nah.
Yeah, so it's not too bad there because just bits of your ship ablate off. Right. So the only question is, are you smart enough to wear vac suits when you get into a ship-to-ship combat? Yeah. Because if not, a hole gets put in your ship, all the air goes out, and everybody suffocates. Whereas if you're wearing vac suits, then you've got a better chance. So it's not too bad there. but in some systems, it's kind of all or nothing. And,
Yeah.
if somebody puts a heat round into your tank, then that's the end of the campaign for those 4 players. So,
Right.
So you would have to adjust the rules so that it's not immediate death for everyone, which you can do, but we'll work on that.
Right.
At the moment, we've just got the personal combat, and that's enough.
Since we have Chris, and I don't think, unless Awig has gone back and watched previous live streams we've done, why don't we demonstrate a little bit of this conflict system here?
Oh, well, we will. So there will be a combat, but in the last session that Bill did, he had just landed in Frankistan, and he was going from the airport to the barracks, and so he was on the back of a truck with a few other guys, and there was a Marine Hummer behind and in front, escorting them through the green zone of the city, and they got ambushed in the green zone, of course. They got ambushed. Vehicle pulled up in front, vehicle pulled up behind to block their way, and started shooting them up. And the Marines in the front had a little bit of trouble. Bill and the others decided they didn't like sitting in the truck unarmed, just taking fire, waiting to see what happened. So they climbed out, and the gunner on the front Humvee had been shot and slumped down. So Bill crawled up the back of the Humvee, pushed the guy down, and lying on top of the Humvee was firing the machine gun at those guys. And those guys got shot up, and they decided that things hadn't gone quite the way they expected, so they should go and have a cup of tea or something and do something else rather than shooting up these Americans, and they pissed off.
Willing to die for the revolution, but not today.
Yeah. So Bill and his guys attended to their wounded, and they made their way back to the barracks. And Bill saw in the local news later 2 big stories in the local news. One was that the local news, a number of civilians had been killed in the crossfire, and the local news attributed that to the Marine fire rather than to the Squad of Righteous Fury fire. And so the International Committee of the Red Cross was meeting with the Commanding General of FAF and asking them not to use heavy weapons in urban areas because of the risk of collateral damage and so on. So that's yet to be decided or whatever. And the second big story was that the World Moose Census had begun, and they were counting up the moose. And so Bill read the paper and said, they're counting the moose. That's nice. He wasn't that concerned about the civilian deaths.
Not really that interested in what the IRC has to say about whether or not I'm going to employ a 50 caliber M2HB to defend myself. Not giving too many shits. All right, so the first,
I didn't think he would, but
yeah, it was a good addendum to the game.
Yeah. So more recently, taken in this Russian guy Believ, he was a guy who was helping smuggle surface-to-air missiles into Frankistan, which, as the Americans had done to the Russians in Afghanistan in the 80s, now the Russians are doing to the Americans in Frankistan in the 2020s, or starting to attempt to do so, because the FAF and the United Nations operation are massively undermanned, so they can't control the entire country with foot patrols or vehicle patrols. They have to use a lot of air mobile assets. You've got to fly guys around. If these helicopters start getting shot down, then that leaves FAF with 2 choices: to either withdraw from the country or to massively increase the number of troops. And they don't want to withdraw and just hand it over to the Russians. And they're not politically able to put in masses of troops because people are a little bit tired. After 20 years of war, they're a little bit tired of it all. So they have to stop. They absolutely had to stop the flow of surface-to-air missiles into the country. And another team did. An Australian team went in. And in the process, they captured this Russian guy, Believ, who seems to be GRU or something like that. Yeah, so he's been interrogated recently, though someone from the Russian embassy keeps showing up and demanding his release. But he's under the control of the DKP, the Das Kapital Police, and the Das Kapital Police just kind of stare them down, and the stare, which means fuck off. So, yeah. And where is he? Oh, here he is. All right, this is Baliev, also known as the GRU agent Igor Vsevolodovich Gherkin. This is the guy that they've got detained.
All right. Well, I think the first order of business is since our contact doesn't want me shaking down the locals about what went down in the Market Square in the Green Zone, but yeah, I think we're gonna go talk to Believ for a little bit.
Gherkin, his real name is. Baliev was the nom de guerre that he was using in Frankistan.
Whatever.
Yeah. So, and you also know about the Squad of Righteous Fury that they've got a shadow mayor.
They've got a what near?
Shadow military commander whose identities you don't know, and yeah, they've got a shadow mayor and a shadow commander, much like the Viet Cong did, Vietnam. But you don't know who they are. But the Australian team found out that there was a cafe owner in Das Kapital who he acts as the recruiter. He recruits for the low-level guys, the common guards and the messengers and so on. So they pass messages between each other by a motorcycle courier who memorizes a string of letters and numbers, and then it's decoded by a one-time pad. So all that fancy electronic warfare stuff that you guys have got is not very useful, unfortunately, in this case, in dealing with the Squad of Righteous Fury. So that's another thing that makes you suspect that it might be being directed a lot by the Russians, because it seems a bit smart for a bunch of guys in the former Soviet Union.
All right. Well, I want his docs before we go see the Russian, and see if I can.
Chris has got another story about taking a 120mm Savot to the front of the turret, and then a unit in Bosnia. Bill, I think you have to get Chris on at some point to talk about his experiences. And,
I mean that's that would be the DT-17 125 on a T-72 that pranged him, and that doesn't surprise me because generally the Russians don't sell their good shit to client states. There's lots of stories about Iraqi tungsten rounds just hitting and shattering, hitting and sticking in, or hitting and bouncing off of Abrams all the way back in '91 when they were just driving the M1 IPs around. So yeah, that's
so I think you want to have Chris on to talk about his stories, his experiences, as much as he's comfortable with.
That might be a hoot.
He's got a little bit of a horror story there. He may or may not wish to share his horror stories live on YouTube, but he'll have some humorous stories anyway, being in the military. And he's a gamer, so I don't know. I think ex-military gamers are the most interesting people. But that's just me.
First of all, Chris, if you game, send me a message on Facebook or pop in the comments on any of the YouTube stuff. And second of all, Kyle, remember, man, even you just here one night a week, you are the co-host, so don't ever be afraid, dude. Just you see something cool out there, you're as much a part of it as anybody else. So, and Awig says he found out about us from Ty Beard. Did you catch part of the Ty Beard stream? I don't want to get too far afield from the game, but did you catch any of that? Kyle? Did we?
Me? Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Sorry, I thought you were talking to A-Week and you were waiting
Oh,
for
no,
a
no,
response.
no. No. Yeah, you should check out the Friday of Thursday or Friday of last week when I had Ty Beard on. We talked about the OGL, something I've been afraid of for a long time, but if I start talking about that stream, I'll end up renumerating the whole stream, and that's not what we're here to do tonight. So you guys, if you want to hear like an actual attorney and game designer talk about his feelings about the OGL, check that live stream out. But not right now. Watch us, and then go check it out later. So, yeah, I want the dossier on the cafe guy, and then I want to go see the Russian.
We don't have a dossier on the cafe guy yet because DKP has just started surveilling him. So the fat guys wanted to surveil them, but they thought that a bunch of gringos might stand out a bit in the depths of the city, sitting across from a cafe where all the guys sit and drink coffee and play dominoes and smoke and stuff. They thought that you guys might stand out a bit. So the DKP is surveilling them. They don't have a dossier at the moment. They don't know who the hell the guy is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, but you can talk to the Russian guy. He's been detained. So
then I at least want a picture of the cafe guy. In fact, that would be even more helpful than a dossier. To get a nice grainy drone footage type photo of him.
Yeah, they give you a picture of the cafe guy.
All right, good. Now we're going to go talk to the Russian.
Yep.
Get to use some of those mad psychology skills I've got. So, I'm assuming we don't get ambushed and shot at on the way there.
No, you're just driving through the city.
Oh, okay. All right. Question for you to go back to the ambush. What time of day was it?
A few weeks on, because you had wounds and they got healed up and they've given you lots of briefings on what's happening in the country and so on and so forth. So this is a few weeks on.
No, I understand, but what time of day was it when we went through?
It was the morning.
It was the morning. Good. Okay, that's very good. That's very good. All right.
Igor had already been detained for a couple of weeks when that happened.
Okay, that's fine.
So he wouldn't have had anything to do with it.
No, I understand. I still want to talk to him.
Okay. Yep. So you go down to the DKP police headquarters. They've got the setup is you've got the FAF intelligence headquarters in one wing of the building, and then there's some caterers and things like that in the middle, and a little bit of UN guys as well. And then you've got the DKP police on the other wing of the building, or specifically the ones that you deal with. It's called the prevention section. And there are about 45 guys that are all extremely trustworthy. You don't get into the prevention section unless you've had a family member killed by an insurgent. They want to know that you're absolutely loyal, and you absolutely hate every opponent, everyone who's committing violent acts against the people of Frankistan and the government. So they've got about 45 guys, and they're all really well motivated and incorruptible and so on. And they're run by a guy called Colonel Shah. Who's pretty hardcore. Now, Colonel Shah is a fierce patriot and very loyal to those who are loyal to him. And he doesn't fuck around.
No, go ahead.
Colonel Shah, so he's the DKP prevention section commander.
And you said this guy was like a polymath, like broad spectrum languages, brilliant guy.
No, he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's a very educated man, yeah.
Okay.
He's a Rhodes Scholar. And he wants to see his country stable, liberal democracy. But, recognises you've got to, he views it as you've got to break eggs to make omelettes kind of thing. Some of the eggs he breaks are the heads of people who are detained by his police. So, officially you're meant to have good conditions and that, but so when you go into that wing of the building, down in the basement is when they've got the detainees. There is a there is a Frankenstein prison system, but it's this massive, miserable thing, and someone goes into that, they never come out. Or they go into that, they disappear, because they either disappear into obscurity, or they get killed, or they bribe their way out.
All right.
And are never seen again. But these are the holding cells that they've got for people on their way to the main prison, and also for the high-value detainees, such as foreign spies.
So
he's there.
I'm going to stop on the way there. You said there was like a catering section in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to stop in and throw the equivalent of a couple of bucks down for one of them and get like a gallon or 2-gallon jug of water.
Mm-hmm. And so you go through into the police section, and you're escorted down to the basements. You go past some of the cells, and you've got like guys hung upside down and being beaten with rubber hoses and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty low-tech, nasty stuff. Smells of feces and blood.
Sure.
It's a pretty miserable place. There's a lot of suffering going on. And you come to Igor's cell, and Colonel Shah is waiting for you. And Shah's a big, muscular dude, clean shaven except for a handlebar moustache.
Nice.
Massive handlebar moustache.
Wearing
his beret. It's not a real action movie unless the guys have got a really shitty beret.
Sure.
He's got a really shitty beret. It's not properly folded across and that. And he says, "Welcome, Lieutenant Walters. I'm Colonel Shah," and he offers his hand.
I'm not trying to crush it. Just give him a firm handshake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Colonel.
And he says, "I understand you're here to talk to our GRU man."
Yeah, I just want to ask him a couple questions.
Well, we talked to him. He seems to be immune to the usual capture shock. He didn't seem bothered when he was detained. He just keeps asking to speak to his embassy and maintaining that he is Believ. But your intelligence section has told us that he is not, that he is a GRU operative called Gherkin.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the skinny we've got on him, and I don't know.
We haven't roughed him up as yet because he is a high value detainee and foreign operative. We don't know exactly where he's going with it. And you get the idea that basically, because if you have to actually eventually hand him over to the embassy, and he has his fingers cut off with pliers or something, it might not go down well.
Right.
So.
I'm going to reach up and a bit of a fit of physical strength, just kind of scratch my temple with a hand that's hooked through the handle on the water jug and say, I don't know, I think we can probably come up with a couple of questions I can ask him.
You do, but since your character has got the psychology skill, you know that torture does not give you any more accurate answers. It may get you the same answers more quickly, and it may actually get you more wrong answers because they just want it to stop. So they tell you what you want to hear.
There's a great line from the late Chris Penn in Reservoir Dogs when he's yelling at a couple of the guys about this cop that they've got in their torture room, and he said, "Now you can beat this prick all day long, and he'll tell you that he started the Chicago fire, but that doesn't necessarily make it fucking so."
Yeah. So so that would be counterproductive, and usually torture is engaged in just for fun. Really, they're bored soldiers and that. Most people who get tortured, unless they get tortured in the first 24 hours, they get tortured after they've been detained like 6 or 12 months. Because you don't put the best troops to guard the men, to guard prisoners.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't put your top special forces. You get your bored, stupid people. So
I'm reminded of a story Pappy Boyington was a U.S. Marine Corps fighter ace during the Second World War, and he was captured by the Japanese and imprisoned on the home islands. And one of the guards at the camp, he called him Roy Rogers, and he loved American Westerns. He was this Japanese guy, and he grew up watching American Westerns. And he would claim, like he would boast, that he could do an impersonation of any American from any American Western. And it was always the same thing. He'd put a handkerchief over his mouth and mimic riding a horse. That was it. And one day he's like... And they would make several guesses that they knew were wrong, and he would berate the prisoners and say, "Oh, you're stupid American!" And he's like, he's really trying to sell it to him that he's being Tom Mix or somebody like that. And he says, "Here, I show you," and hands his Arisaka rifle to Boyington to do the mimicking riding the horse around thing, and then comes back and reaches out and takes it back. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They don't leave the smartest people to guard prisoners. There's real world historical proof, folks.
Well, I was thinking more Abu Ghraib, where you got those reserve MPs who just, like, after a year got bored and started torturing the prisoners. There was no purpose for it. They weren't trying to get information or anything. They were just bored and having fun.
Yeah.
So,
So, for the record, for anyone who's watching this, I mean, normally in roleplay, I would not tip my hand. If you're of a sensitive nature and like, oh God, Bill's going to roleplay torturing someone, what kind of fucked up fatal shit is this? I'm not. Just letting you know that you're not about to witness me going into some gross description of waterboarding. I'm not.
Well, if we did it, I'm a big believer in fading to black. It's like if your character has sex with someone, okay, that's nice. It might be part of the story, but we don't need to describe it. We'll just fade to black.
Fade to black.
You have sex. It's very nice. Blah, blah, blah. You torture the guy, and after torturing him, he tells you this. Whatever. That's
right. Yeah.
Some things we don't need to go into gruesome detail.
But I just wanted to get that over to our viewers that, fade to black or no, I'm not playing a Josh Brolin-esque war criminal here. No rules today, just orders. You're clear. This is a bluff. You're American. You have rules. No rules today, just orders. Although push comes to shove. All right, so we're in a cell.
So Shah waves you in. Yeah, and he'll stay and witness it. So so Belial, Igor is he's sitting there on his bunk. His bunk is just it's a stone cell, and part of the stone has been built up into something about 6 foot long and 3 foot wide, and it has a thin blanket on the bottom and a second thin blanket to lie on top, and there's a bucket in the corner for him to relieve himself in, and then there's this tiny little slit that maybe goes to ground level, and that lets a little bit of natural light in. And that's his dim little cell. And then there's a light in the corner with a grid over it, and it provides a dim. It's like an old 40-watt incandescent globe, just in a dim amount of light, just so he doesn't trip over this bit of flagging too often. He's sitting there looking a bit bored and glum, and he's wearing his own clothes, but they're quite dirty by now. It's been a few weeks. And, like I said, he looks bored and glum mostly. And unshaven and so on. So.
Sure. I just walk in and, whatever the Russian word for hello or good morning or whatever is, Das Vidanya is goodbye, so I'm not going to say that.
Walk in, goodbye.
Yeah.
I can't
but
remember.
I'll walk in backwards. I'm getting inside his head.
Does Walter speak Russian? I can't remember. If it's
No, but
not
I mean, I
familiar.
just figure it's one of those things.
I got it.
It's like one word. I'm not like going to attempt to have a conversation with him. More of
Shah
a
says he speaks. Shah says he speaks English.
just more of a sardonic thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not exactly the St. Petersburg Ramada Inn, is it, comrade?
More like Lubyanka.
I wouldn't know. I've never been there myself. Is that where they put in perennial fuck-ups who get caught by opposing governments smuggling missiles
He's looking down and he just sort of,
into
his
neutral
eyes
nations?
slide up. He just slides his eyes up like the eyes say it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, not familiar with the place personally, just read a lot about it. Hell of a situation you got yourself in here. I'm new to town. My name is, well, you can call me Mr. Jones. Let me ask you something. I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Reach into my cargo shorts pocket, because I got cargo shorts. Unfold the paper. You know the coffee shop owner?
The who?
Guy that runs the coffee shop. Come on. I mean, you Russians are fond of your
He
coffee.
just puts his hand out for the picture.
I hand it to him.
Don't know him. And he hands it back.
Damn. I look at the English guy and I said, "You're right. I owe you $5. We're going to have to take it up to level 2. How you eating in here? Has the chow been good?"
Magnificent, he says.
No, yeah, I can imagine. I'm gonna. Is there like a stool out in the hall or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna drag it in with my foot.
Shah says, be careful of the stool. Prisoners often fall against it by accident.
Of course.
It's a metal stool. It's built exactly like a wooden stool, but it's all metal.
I'm guessing it's got some suspicious dents in it here and again.
Yeah.
Maybe some concavities in places where you wouldn't think. Yeah. That is a damn shame. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about the guy. See, I'm just trying to get on my feet here, get up to speed a little bit, and I wanted to make that transition from, sitting at home and scratching my ass and drinking cold beer and eating decent food and not getting beaten up by a bunch of bored prison guards.
Who is he? Who is your cafe owner?
Well, he's a guy that, I don't know, might have been in need of a few odds and ends, a few pieces of hardware. He might have needed a contact, might have needed somebody to reach out to.
For a coffee machine?
Yeah, maybe a coffee machine that was stamped out of the Automat Kalishnikov factory number 143, located just outside St. Petersburg. The coffee grinders with the wooden stocks.
Why would we give it to a cafe? Why would anyone do that? Give that to a cafe owner in the middle of the city with the DKP watching him?
You tell me. I'm just speculating.
That would be stupid, comrade.
So where would they give it to him? Where do you think?
They wouldn't give it to him at all.
No? Who would it be? I'm gonna pick up the.
You tell me, comrade. You are the one with military experience.
I'm gonna pick the water jug up and twist the lid off. Set it back down on the floor.
You tell me, comrade. You are the one with military experience. And you can see by his bearing, he's had military experience.
Yeah.
As well, like, if you had to pick, you're obviously, agency, but like there's FSB, there's GRU, and everything. Yeah, GRU, because they're the military intelligence guys. This guy's got that bearing. He's just got it. He can't stop it. However how trained he is, he can't stop it.
Yeah.
This guy has spent a lot of time ironing uniforms and all that sort of nonsense.
All right. Well.
So he spots you as well.
Sure. Two men, same profession, different pages in the same book. I gotcha. Well, I guess I would have an intermediary, somebody that this guy might introduce them to. Little training camp, little something like that. But you see, our coffee shop owner here, he seems to be quite the mover and shaker. Now, I'm just speculating here. I haven't had a chance to talk to the guy. For all I know, he can give me a nice cup of Vietnamese press and a bit of baklava and the Das Kapital Morning Herald. I could be wrong, That's the way it is with your intelligence guys up the line, right? Simple soldiers like you and me, we just get our marching orders and we go out and we try to figure shit out. Isn't that always the way? Are you thirsty?
A little.
All right. I'll pull a paper cup out of my pocket, pour him some water. There you go.
All right. He takes a drink.
But, yeah, I just want to get all this shit sorted out and spend as little time here.
Shah's standing there, fingering his truncheon that's in his, not a holster, but a little sling that's just sort of fingering the top of it as if he's eager to bring it out and start whacking the guy.
I understand. So, you got tagged bringing Sam's in. And please let's run around the room in circles with you. I am selling water pipes or anything like that. You know what you did. All right. They were going somewhere, some kind of cache, some kind of depot or something like that. Look, you're going to be gone.
Yeah. Okay. So as an aside, okay. So that was part of your briefing. So there was a guy in the city, a former mechanical engineer called Ahmed, and he was arranging like basements and storage places for SAMs inside the city.
Okay.
That was the guy that first crewed, and it was his holiday house in the mountains where Igor here was captured.
Okay.
So his holiday, they thought, oh, let's go check it out. And they checked out holiday house in the mountains, and it was a compound, so rooms on the outside and a courtyard in the middle. And there were SRF guys there, half a dozen SRF guys there, and they had the SAMs all wired up in the middle of the compound. And so they went in, they salted the compound, and the SAMs were all wrapped with det cord and everything. And then they detonated the SAMs to destroy them so they wouldn't fall into the FAF hands. And then they went around the back and they found Igor with one of the SRF guys trying to start a motorbike with a whole bunch of papers and trying to piss off. So he had evidently escorted or facilitated the transport of the SAMs into the country, into that holiday house, and they were then going to go further into the city. And presumably across the country, but at least into the city, because Ahmed had arranged storage places for them all. So that's connected. So he may not actually know the cafe guy, because the cafe guy appears to be involved in recruitment for the local shadow government, the messengers and all the rest. He may not actually know him from a bar of soap. But he would know some of the SRF guys and the commanders and so on. So he may know the shadow commander of the city, but he wouldn't know that. Probably wouldn't know the cafe guy. Just wouldn't have come across it. Not secret or whatever. Just wouldn't have come across him.
Sure.
All
right, so I'll direct my questioning along those lines and say, all right. Well, we won't worry about the guy running the local Denny's. I'll get around to him sooner or later. I always do. I stick the picture back in my pocket. But what about the rest of these guys? You know? I mean,
I think, as you Americans like to say, freedom fighters.
All right. Look, freedom fighters, whatever. You've got to have some points of context, man, of contact, man. You've got to. Look, I'm gonna lean in and just friendly, like, say, look, I gotta walk out of here in 10 or 15 minutes with something actionable. I can't keep these guys on a leash. All right? You think I brought this jug of water in here just to be a badass and make you think I was going to, give me a little glug, glug, glug? No. I want you out of here. I don't want an international incident. But that bunch in the other half of the building, yeah, the freedom fighters got to a bunch of their family members, okay? Give me something.
So you're a good cop. I've seen this movie.
Well, I'm not much of a policeman.
You're Danny Glover. Where is Mel Gibson?
You want to meet Mel Gibson? You really want to meet Mel Gibson? I stand up.
Of course. I like his haircut.
I stand up, pointedly leave the stool in the room, and I turn to the colonel and say, I'm sorry. This man is being exceptionally uncooperative with me, Colonel. I wasn't able to extract any information that might have helped with the political situation in your country. I apologize for wasting your time and making you come down here. Now, I'm afraid that my hands have been overcome with a sudden weakness, so I'm not going to be able to carry that jug of water out. The current IRC and Hague rules require that I admonish you to not use it in any way other than to keep your guests here hydrated. So I look back in at Igor. I guess that's all we've got to say to each other. Say hello to Mr.
Shah cracks his knuckles.
Say hello to Mr. Gibson.
Shah says, my family refugees from the Soviet Union. Times when Russians ruled his country. We'll talk later, he says to you.
To me, all right.
Yeah, he says to you, we will talk later. I will talk to him now.
You have a nice day, sir. And I shake his hand. You too.
All right. And then as you go out, the door is closed behind you. And you... Stop. Oof. All right. So you go off. Do you have any plans for the rest of the day for your character?
I look at my other team members. Who's up for a cup of coffee? Nah, I'm just screwing with you. I don't want to mess with anything they got going on. Mm-hmm. Although...
Well, you can go to your intel section and see what they've got.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the intel section.
Okay, so the intel section, they don't. So DKP tends to handle the humid
Mm-hmm.
so surveilling people and so on, like the cafe owner. And the intel section, does the satellite and the drones and all that sort of stuff. Because remember, they're different units. There's the local police, and then there's the international, the Frankenstein Assistance Force. They're intel section, so they've got different sources of information. And if they could cooperate better, that would be good. But they don't always coordinate terribly well. Not out of malice, it's just entirely different systems and different wings in the same building and everything.
Okay.
So,
well, I am going to ask if they have an active drone on the cafe right now. I don't mean like JDAMs and Hellfires waiting to go or anything. Just
no, they don't. They don't. They have them out in the countryside, basically, surveilling the movements of guys in the countryside. Because the big nightmare is that some of the insurgent groups will team up and then assault and take over a provincial capital or something like that.
Sure.
So they tend to have the drones out watching them, and if they find them gathering together, then they go and they act on it. So you'd have to go to the DKP to get any info on what's happening with the cafe guy or any other kind of human. But the intel section, they tell you, there's no big movements, guys, around. After we left that holiday house, some guys went and picked over the remains, obviously looking to see if there were any surviving Sams and that, but there weren't. They'd all been blown to hell. They picked over the remains of the place, and we left them to it. There's not a lot of radio chatter, but there usually isn't a lot of radio chatter because these guys run on personal messages. So, it's a lot more human, and that's why we cooperate with the DKP.
Okay. I'm not pulling I'm going to go over your heads movement, but I'm just assuming that in terms of getting permission to do this, I would have to go to basically the guy, and I forget I'm going to make a note of his name, the head man here. What is it?
The head of FAP or the head of the UN operation?
The UN operation.
The UN operation, well, yeah, they run parallel, but not one. You don't have one in command with the other, but they run parallel. The head of the UN operation is an Indian officer, General Singh.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I meant my direct.
There's an American in charge called Burke. Major General Burke.
All right.
And he just hangs around the intel room and that because he's only got about 1,000 troops.
Sure.
And at least half of them are support types like the intel and the caterers and all that sort of stuff.
He's
got most of not all, but most of a Marine battalion. But he also has command of, but they're not American, but he has command of. There's some British troops, there's some French troops, and there's an Aussie commando company as well.
Okay.
So he has altogether about 2,000-3,000 guys.
All right.
Most of them are fairly busy just guarding the FAF and the UN buildings and all the rest. And embassies and so on. Most of them are busy doing that. There's a quick reaction force, which is usually just a bunch of Marines and Hummers.
Mm-hmm. So this is the guy who recruited me, who came into the city with me, that sort of thing. He's out of the picture.
Donovan. No, he's still there. Donovan's still there.
Donovan. Okay, thank you. That's
So he's formally in charge of the Kilo. Of the Kilo section, which is you guys and another team.
All right. Then so I don't seem like I'm skipping ahead in the lunch line. I'm going to go talk to Donovan and say, hey, is there any chance we can pull down an observation drone and park it over this guy's joint?
Well, we can, but I mean, what are you looking for? You can't see much from 10,000 feet.
Well, I guess that depends on who. That depends on how NTK it is, but uh, I'm looking for patterns. I know this guy at the cafe has got some regular comers and goers, and I want to find a thread that I can pick and start pulling at. But if they see my pasty white ass sitting across the street in a Humvee with a pair of binoculars, that ain't gonna work.
Well, you just go and talk to the DKP guys and see what they've come up with, because they've been surveilling.
All right. So I guess back to the DKP, boys. Hey, in the most general sense of the word boys, to mean fellow team members. So
okay,
what do the DKP have?
Okay, wander across the building. Well, they fob you off and tell you that you need to talk to Colonel Shah, and he's busy at the moment interrogating a prisoner.
Okay. All right. Well, I know what I'd like to do in character is go Baltimore cop on some of the people who live in that area where we got ambushed, but Donovan has already expressed his desire for me to not do that, so all I'm saying
he basically says we've tried that and it didn't work. So.
Well, you tried it anyway. All right, well, I guess my character will try and absorb the tiny bit of information I've got, wait for Colonel Shah, and I don't know, read up on the intel situation as best as I can until he's free.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you do that for the rest of the day, briefings and so on for the rest of the day, and toss down for the night. And the next morning, there's all a buzz around the headquarters. So the Russian ambassador has shown up at the DKP headquarters on the other side of the building with a bunch of Russian Marines escorting him. And apparently he wants his guy. Apparently he wants his guy.
All right.
And there's a bit of a standoff happening because the DKP won't let they'll let the ambassador in, but they won't let the armed guys in. So yeah, there's a bit of a standoff happening between the DKP and the Russian Marines.
All right, I'll assuming he doesn't have a million things on his plate because of this, I'm going to ask Donovan. I know we're not.
Donovan says, "Gear up."
Well, that answers that question. All right.
He says it can't be our Marines going confronting that. That's too messy. But you guys can. We can.
All right. I'll put actual long.
Gear up. Head down. Head down to the armory. Gear up.
I'll put actual long pants on. Get the sappy plate, the trauma plate inserts, and
yeah. So you get armor class 3, the armor class 3 body armor class 3 helmet, and you get an assault rifle with 3 magazines.
Yes, but is it an M4 or an M4A1? Sorry, little in joke with Kyle and I there.
Whichever you like. An assault rifle with 3 magazines, and they give you 2 stun and 2 fragmentation grenades as well.
All right.
So yeah, you guys gear up, and so you gear up and you head over to the DKP site. Now, are you going to go from within the building or from outside the building?
Outside the building.
Looks like our viewers have dropped off. They're about to miss the firefight. Anyway, they can come back and look at it later. All right, so outside you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so out the front of the building is parking space and gardens. Okay. But there aren't tall trees and things like that, so there's a pretty decent field of view. There's a number of bollards, so just concrete barriers to stop anyone driving a truck bomb into the building or whatever. So you go out there and you see 8 Russian Marines, and they're all geared up. One of them is carrying a machine gun. No RPGs or anything, but one of them is carrying a machine gun, and the other 7 are carrying AK-74s. And they probably have something else on them, whatever. But yeah, they've got body armor on and that. They look like, but they were wearing berets, not helmets. They're wearing berets. They look like fairly serious professional guys. Yeah. There's a couple of Russian civilians standing around. They're obviously attachés or something. A couple of civilians standing around, and the ambassador isn't visible. He must have gone inside the building, or he's been kidnapped or something. Who knows? But anyway, he's gone inside the building probably.
Right. So we got
and there's some cops out the front, some DKP out the front.
So we got VDV, we got the local heat, we got us.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not lucky enough to have the Australians around, or they're not going to want to get involved in the beginning of World War III.
And so the cops who are at the front of the building are not the prevention section cops. They're just regular cops.
Shit.
So they're not wearing body armor. They've got pistols on their side, but they're not wearing body armor.
Shit.
And they don't have as professional a demeanor as the normal ones. Shah comes out and he sees you, and he says, look, the ambassadors are very happy at how we found Igor. He doesn't realize how clumsy Igor is and how often he falls against the side of that stool I was telling you about.
Well, I did warn you. He didn't slip and spill some water up his nose too, did he?
A little bit of that. He's a very clumsy guy.
Yeah, those clumsy Russians.
So there's the Marines standing around, and they look fairly serious. Russian Marines. And they kind of perk up a bit when they see you guys come.
All right. Are we in vehicle, or we're just on foot? We just walked around. Right?
Just on foot, because it's a big long building.
Okay.
It's a big long building. You came from this side, and they're over on this side.
Okay.
Like I said, lots of concrete bollards about, vehicles and so on. And the entrance to that building.
Where's to the colonel? Where's the ambassador?
He's inside talking to Igor.
All right. How?
He waved his way in, and I called up the ministry, and they said let him in. So I had to let him in.
I'll indicate, just kind of with my head, I sort of nod in the direction of the beat cops. I'm like, how are these guys going to do if it drops in the pot?
Not very well, he says.
How fast can you get a QRF team over here?
Well, a couple of them are out on jobs at the moment. There's just a few guys inside, but I would rather not escalate things with the Russians if I can.
I wouldn't either, but Ivan tends to get kind of twitchy. See that guy there with the RPD? Yeah, they ain't fucking around.
All right, a guy comes out, and he's old and fat, and wearing a suit, so he must be the ambassador. And he comes out and he starts shouting orders to the guys in Russian, and he pulls out his mobile phone and he's on the phone.
What do the guys
shouting orders?
Do when he starts shouting orders?
They take their weapons off safe.
Oh shit! I'm gonna motion my team to drop down behind the concrete barricades and do the same.
Oh, when you do that, the Marines all drop down. And one of them grabs the ambassador and he drags him behind the bollard. The ambassador's and drops his phone. And the ambassador's calling out the Shah. Is it? My country demands you release him straight away. We are authorized to use force to rescue our citizen from this kidnapping. And Shah drops behind cover as well.
It's your play, Colonel.
So Shah's getting on the phone, and so you guys are all eyeing each other off warily because you're all sitting behind bollards and that cover and that.
I yell back over. Hang on a second, he's having a problem getting a signal.
Oh, and they've all set themselves up, and they've set themselves up properly. Right. They obviously know what they're doing. These guys.
Sure, I mean, again, they're Russian naval infantry. I am not looking forward to the next 60 seconds if things go further south than they already have. We still got a couple people around, so even if the lead doesn't fly, we'll have we'll have some fun.
The ambassador says, "We are going inside to get our citizen. If anybody tries to stop us, we are going to use lethal force." And the ambassador gets up with a bunch of guys, and he leaves behind two guys. He leaves behind one rifleman and the machine gunner. He says something. He gives them various orders in Russian and that, which you can't understand. And but where is she? Alin, she speaks Russian. She says he's telling them, if we move, to fuck us up.
If they move, fuck them up.
Yeah. That's what the ambassador's telling them. If those guys move,
and that's what I'm telling her.
Okay.
If they make a play,
well, there would just be two outside. He's taking the other six in with him.
Right. If these two make a play, if they get jumpy, and decide to become heroes of the motherland, then let's escort them along their way as quickly as possible.
Okay, so the Marines point their rifles at the cops as they enter, and the rifles look around for orders, and Shah says, "Are we going to stop them?"
It's your police station. Are you going to stop them?
It's your third world war, he says.
I'd rather have an international incident. I'd rather have a diplomatic incident than tanks rolling into Europe. So I'm gonna let this small fry go.
All right. So the in that case the just local police get out of the way. They got their hands on their sidearms, but they don't draw them. And they stand back. The ambassador goes inside with his six guys, and you hear various shouting and stuff from inside. Now, this is a good time to roll the dice just to see, does shit happen? Because sometimes just someone gets jumpy, someone trips over something, hits the trigger.
Yeah, ask roll two dice. Concord.
Yeah. So roll two dice. Roll high.
8.
8. Okay. Nothing horrible happens. Nobody gets jumpy, and so the ambassador comes out. There's two Marines supporting Igor, and Igor looks fucked up. Igor has been as thoroughly beaten as you can be and not die.
I look over at Shar and I'm like, did you get any information out of him at least?
Oh, yes, he says.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's horrible, but you got,
You got an omelette out of those eggs.
I'm sorry, what?
You got an omelette out of those eggs.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because if you just kick the shit out of it, I'm like, I got my elbow propped up on the bollard, and if you just kick the shit out of the guy for the hell of it and didn't get anything, I'd be, I I would be disappointed. I wouldn't be angry, just disappointed. But you got something, so all right.
Yeah. All right. So the machine gunner's looking at you, and he's obviously itching to just like. He's spent his whole life hoping to be able to shoot Americans. You can see it in his eyes. Yeah. The ambassador comes out with the beaten up Igor, a couple of Marines supporting him, and another 4. They're just like patrolling around and they're keeping an eye on you guys.
Yeah, I've got my gun in the ready position, but my hand, I'm just like giving him the international freedom symbol.
So they move over towards what's obviously their vehicles from the embassy. They move over towards them, and like the machine gunner and that keep their eye on you. So they're doing a fire and movement thing or a center peel, but without actually firing, obviously. Yeah. So part of them cover you and keep their eye on you, while another part moves back, and they're dragging Igor along, shuffling him along, supporting him with pretty rapid movement. And the ambassador just kind of shambles along. Just overweight old guy, so he just kind of shambles with obviously no military experience.
I'm picturing English actor Jos Ackland, who had this incredible talent to play guys exactly like the ambassador. This hefty English guy, fun actor.
Shambling along. He's one of those guys whose suit always looks messy, even when it's well pressed. And that.
Sure, yeah. Tie is constantly like this.
Yeah.
Looks like he bought it off the rack at Sears in 1982.
Yeah. So he shambles along and goes to his vehicle, and a chauffeur jumps out and opens the door for him. And so they barrel these guys into the vehicle, and then the Russian Marines themselves get into like they've got like Land Rovers or whatever the Russian equivalent is. Land Rovers.
I'm still, when I see the machine gun guy piling in, I mean, is he still eyeballing me even though he's getting into his into his PC?
Okay, so all right, so another luck roll, because this is another situation. So another luck roll that just nobody jumps or looks the wrong way or something.
A 10.
A 10. That's lucky. That's lucky. That's good. So there was one jumpy local police officer, but he thinks the better of. Yeah. he sort of pulls out his pistol, checks the slide, and then looks over at the 8 Russian Marines, and then he puts his pistol back. He thinks the better of. He decides not to try to get a posthumous medal.
Yeah.
Bravery medal. Okay, and the Russian Marines drive off, and the ambassador drives off, and everyone can stand up and relax.
I stand up, kind of shake myself, adjust my body armor. Woo! Anybody else a little hard? Not being gross. You just got like a little half chub. Anybody else? Kind of got that going. Anybody? Is it just me? Is it just...
Alina looks at you in disgust. This is man.
Oh, come on. I'm just messing with you. But I mean, did they get a little tight? They get a little stiff? Just a little bit. Just a little,
McPherson says, mate.
I'm sorry, what?
You shoot those cunts. McPherson, who is an Aussie, says, yeah, mate. And why didn't we shoot those cunts anyway?
I'm not going to start the fucking Third World War over some mealy mouth GRU guy. All right.
Ah,
Look, I get paid whether the Russians get hold of them or not.
Frankistan is big and shovels are cheap. We do it properly, nobody ever need know.
All right, look, I'll make it up to you. I hear the Czechoslovakians have an embassy. We'll black bag one of their guys and kill all them, okay? But only if you help me catch the cafe guy in the act. You gotta eat your vegetables before you get dessert. I'm gonna get on the phone to Donovan. Hey, you're not gonna believe it, but we just about had a bullet slinging exercise with the Russians. How's your day going?
He says, "Oh, we're hearing some interesting things on the radio. Come back and let's have a chat."
All right, I go back.
Okay, so you go back to the intel section. Donovan says, "So, as you know, we have some difficulty intercepting the messages of the local insurgents because they're inconsiderate enough not to come into the 20th century and use radio, let alone the 21st century and use encrypted radio. And they just use messages like, what is this, the Battle of Waterloo?"
I've got it. I'll open a mobile phone store. I'll need some seed money for property and whatever passes for the local FCC rights, but
so they're useless. But the Russians, our old friends, our old foes, so fond of the electronic communications. So fond of them. Okay, after some medical treatment, they're going to take our guy Igor straight out of the country. They're going to hop him on a plane. There's a commercial flight going to Moscow, and they're going to stick him on the commercial flight straight away. They bought out half a dozen seats, but it's just him and one other guy who can leave the embassy and go straight to the airport. No Marines whatsoever. Just him and one other guy, one armed guy. And the guy won't even be a Marine. He's just going to be GRU himself. One spy with a Tokarev.
Really?
Yeah, that's all they're going to do. The Russians love to chatter on their radio. And their encryption is from about 1978, so.
You gotta love single sideband non-frequency hopping.
Yeah, that's the one.
All right. Give me 4 guys and a.
You've got
no. I've got.
You've
my
got
team
5 guys. You've got 7.
Give me Let me see. I want somebody on Overwatch.
Well, you use your team as you see fit.
Yeah.
But we can give you a vehicle. Yeah, we can give you a vehicle, like so. And you distribute your team as you see fit. We can work up maps of the likely routes between the embassy and the airport. And you can do it as you see fit.
All right.
And that will be the next session.
Okay. Well, that was some good.
Or you can just let him go as you see fit.
No, I think next session we're gonna have a little bit of action, and we're gonna black bag us a Russian or two.
There we go. So there you go, guys. That's conflict.
That's conflict.
Where you might decide not to fight.
Exactly. And I apologize to anybody who was waiting to see, a 30-man shootout or something like that, but
I was waiting. My dice are warm.
You're the game master. You could have had the Russians try and turn us into Swiss cheese, man.
Well, no, I mean, I'm a big believer in I'm not sure I like the term, but the D&D term, the living world, that the game world is what it is. We do not alter the game world to make an adventure happen or to save the player characters. or to destroy the player characters or whatever. It is what it is. And if you do nothing, some things will happen. If you do something, that may change the things that happen. But like I was reading on Reddit or something, some poor bastard commenting on Reddit and saying, if the players make a plan that's going to make things super easy for them, should I change the game world and change the adventure so that it nixes them? It's like, no, dude.
No.
Let them succeed. Let them succeed. You sit down and you think what the enemy, what the defenses are, what their goals are, what's available to them in terms of weapons or magic or whatever. You decide that, and then the players go in. You don't change it. Now, they may change in response to it, like if the players come into the dungeon today and clear part of it out, and then they come to the dungeon a week later, well, the goblins who were in there and got murdered the last time, they may decide to put up defenses this time, if it's a week later or something. But they don't just magically summon up defenses from nowhere just because PCs showed up. And, So I'm a big believer in living well. The Russians didn't want to die. They just wanted to get their guy out.
And I had a discussion.
If the Russians were, if it was going to take killing a bunch of locals, Americans, to get their guy out, they were willing to do that. But if they could do it without it, awesome. So that was it. So they weren't going to just start shooting. But that was the two luck rolls. Because you can always get unlucky. Somebody just, fires off. And, like that scene, you haven't seen it, but there's a scene in one of the Sicario movies where they're facing some guys off and they don't know if the guy's an enemy or not. And it's like, put down your weapons. No, you put down your weapons. No, put down your weapons. No, you put down your weapons. And then somebody panics and fires. Yep. So then the American team just opens up and wipes them out. So shit happens sometimes, but I could have made a combat happen, but that wasn't the goal.
Friday mornings or Friday afternoons midday guest was an old buddy of mine, Kevin Wood, and I think you and Kevin would get on, but a mutual friend of ours, and I think I've told you about this before, Jeff Johnson, good game master, good guy. He had a tendency, though, sometimes, like, he'd overhear us out of character talking about the game and talking about how in character there were things we were going to do to affect our progress in the game. And then when game time rolled around, the villains had prepared for that. Like specific things that we said we were going to do, the villains had that counter. And I mean...
Yeah, that would be very annoying.
Yeah, that... Now...
Part of the fun of role-playing games is making that plan, and at least some of the time it succeeds. No, but if the GM just totally nixes it all the time, it's just depressing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like... Well, it goes back to what what was it? Christopher said that over on Facebook, that, and I kind of elaborated on it. What was it? That just because you're a good or great game master doesn't make you a good writer, and vice versa. If you want to write a short story where the characters basically move at your whim, then do that. But if you're going to run a role-playing game, run a role-playing game. Yeah. Let players do things and let things unfold as they will. If you're so in love with your story or like if you had said, no, it's critical to how this game's going to unfold that these guys have a firefight now. I mean, it wouldn't matter what we did, And you're not that kind of game master. That's not, Yeah,
it makes it... I mean, the point of a game has an uncertain outcome.
Yeah.
That's what I say about things like Last of Us or whatever, where you just do a combat to unlock the next cutscene. You can't change the outcome.
Yeah.
And so... the combat is fun, so That's not bad. But yeah, it can be a bit frustrating in some ways. We just, yeah, we don't want that in a regular game session, because the point of a game has an uncertain outcome, and then things that you do, whether it be pure dice rolling like snakes and ladders or pure decision like chess, things that you as the player do will change the outcome.
Yeah.
But if you can't change the outcome, then what's the point?
One of my favorite video game series of all times is Half-Life, and I really wish Valve would get around to making a proper Half-Life 3 or sequel or whatever. Anyway, lots of us fans do. At the end of one of the chapters, it says video game players don't play tabletop for completely scripted gameplay. Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of one of the chapters of one of the expansions to Half-Life 2, you help a bunch of people trying to escape the Combine, get onto a train, and flee. And then when it's your turn, you have to fight a Strider, which is like this big tripod War of the Worlds creature, and you can't take it down with small arms fire. You have to use these anti-tank rockets. There is a point in the battle when it shows up to stop you that it basically, by firing its highly destructive main gun, it keeps you from going any further in the map. During one of my playthroughs, your missile ammo that you can take it down with is scattered around the train platform. Well, during one of my playthroughs, I very meticulously, because this game, it's a first-person shooter, it doesn't have an inventory system. It's just got, like, weapons pickups. But I carried enough, using the gravity gun, I carried enough I'm gonna see. There we go. I carried enough missile ammo to the train platform before that sequence started, that the minute the Strider showed up, right there, right then, before he could cut me off from the rest of my allies, I could take it down with missiles. So I go to the line def. That, in game terms, is where it's the trigger point in a video game where a set sequence will begin. I cross the line def. Here comes the Strider. I start grabbing my missiles from the bucket of them that I brought and drop the Strider. Immediately another one walks out. And it was basically, it's the only time in the Half-Life series I felt that Valve just gave me, the player, the middle finger and said, no, you're gonna, like, every other time you accept it. It's like, okay, I'm in a lab. The end of the hallway is down there. The bad guys are going to come out of these doors. There's pretty much only one thing for me to do. I'm not mad that I can't carry a jackhammer and drill through the wall and make a tunnel and move from room to room and completely avoid it. I get it. In that case, though, I felt like, I'll solve this problem right here. I have all the tools to solve this problem. And the video game said, nope, you're going to do it the way I want you to do it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I had brought enough ammo to take down a second Strider, if the computer was said, okay, I'm spawning a third.
Yeah.
And that is that particular instance, in all the brilliance of all the Half-Life games, going all the way back to Half-Life Uplink, which was like the demo of Half-Life that they released on magazines. That's like its own separate level, all the way through to Half-Life Alyx. That is the only time I've ever played the Half-Life games and felt like they're screwing me just because they have this set piece that they want to have happen.
Yeah.
Like all of the rest of them, they are set pieces, but they happen organically. But that was very clearly a case of, nope, we have a scripted sequence. You're going to do it the scripted way and no other way.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, computer games are bound to be like that because computers are dumb and there's only so many things that you can do. But one of the great things about role-playing games, as I've said before, as Bill knows well, even the dumbest game master is smarter than a computer. So there's no 3-foot wall problem. Remember that some of the old first-person shooters?
Yeah.
There's a 3-foot wall, so you couldn't go past it.
Doom.
I remember my wife playing some Sherlock Holmes game, and there was a particular door that you had to open in an abandoned building, and she couldn't figure out how to do the key thing. She's like, "Can't I just kick the damn door in? There's nobody else in the building. It's just kick the damn door in." You know? And in a role-playing game, she would be able to, but it's a computer game, so she couldn't. You know. So there's no set piece. You know, you could have just shot Believ there in the prison. Nobody would have stopped you. There would have been consequences to that. You know, you have to make him disappear, or you have to dump his body in front of the Russian embassy. You can do whatever the hell you like, but there will be, you know, reasonable consequences to that. So.
But you're talking about the 3-foot wall. That is infamous. In Doom, there are maps that are predicated on you, like the exit's right over there. I can see it, and I'm starting here. I've got to go 500 yards in that direction and fight through 200 demons to get to that. And there are... Doom source code was released many years ago, and people have rebuilt Doom to add modern shooter features to it. Like mouse look, you can aim up and down, but also crouch and jump. And some of those levels that like are ostensibly 15, 20 minutes of gameplay because you can crouch and jump. Now it's like step over the wall. There's the exit. Bye.
Yeah.
But like you said, you know, I could have shot Believ right there. We could have opened up on the two Russian Marines, and then.
Or you could have tried to wrestle them to the ground, or could have chucked your stun grenades in, or.
Yeah.
You could have jumped in a Hummer and run them over. Oh, well, there were bollards around, so probably not. Could have called in a Predator drone strike on yourself.
Yeah, I think we were a little too close for a 250-pound JDAM.
But all sorts of things you could do. So, or you could shake hands and buy them a drink and say you're welcome to him.
The beauty of tabletop role-playing games, folks. And this is a beauty. I quite enjoy it. By the way, the Viking Hat GM on YouTube, is that you, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to have just added admin or moderator privileges to the chat to some rando who just happened to have your your handle. Anyway, so that was good, man. That was a great stream, and that was a thoroughly enjoyable session of conflict. A rather non-confrontational conflict. It was more of a conversation, if you will. But it was good. It was good. And folks, I've got the drive-through RPG link. Let me see is that still in the buffer. Yes, it is. So if you, for whatever reason, are not looking at the description, you can just click that link I just shared. I shared it over on Facebook. Christopher mentioned, and I didn't want to get into this, he's going to go out and buy a couple of copies, so that's nice.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher.
And I just want to say to the new folks who joined up, like AWIG, thank you very much for signing up. We are now, Kyle, because I know you were curious about this, we are now currently sitting at 715 subscribers. So when we hit, for those of you who may not be aware of this, I like to mention this, but when we hit 1,000, our celebration of 1,000 subs will be a virtual tabletop con. Kyle will be GMing. I will be GMing. We're going to take a day and we're going to run games virtual tabletop online. I'll be running AD&D, maybe some original D&D, Conflict, Gamma World, all kinds of stuff. Kyle, I'm sure, has a quiver of games he'll run. So tell your friends who like tabletop role-playing games and chat and talking about history of games and so on and etc. Click like, click subscribe, click the little bell. That helps too, so you get notifications. Facebook is very hinky about small channels being in the what is the word, in the algorithm. We don't get promoted much, so click that bell icon to get your notifications. You might not necessarily see them. I do this 5 days a week, usually around lunchtime, unless it's Wednesday, in which case we do this with Kyle. And Kyle, I don't know if you heard, but next week we have 3 TSR alums are going to be on the show, 2 on Thursday and 1 on Friday.
Good, because I'll be able to watch but not start, because it'll be school holidays. So
I understand. So we're going to have...
be able to watch but not miss.
We're going to have Skip Williams, TSR alum Skip Williams, Al Hammock, who co-wrote Dungeon Module A4 and Ghost Tower of Inverness, which I was a little disappointed was not about a town in northern central Florida. I think every country in the Western world has an Inverness in it. And then, so we got Jim Ward, Skip Williams, and Al Hammock. All are going to be here next week. Jim and Skip on Thursday, and then no, I'm sorry, Al and Jim on Thursday, and Skip Williams on Friday, and it's going to be a stone groove. So thank you to everyone who's subscribed. You're getting us closer. You're getting you closer to the mini convention, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are too. Any closing thoughts, Kyle?
Let the dice fall where they may.
Let the dice fall where they may. Wise advice from a wise man. You guys haven't...
I was saving that for after the firefight, but we didn't have one, so...
Oh, well. Well, I'll commit a suicidal charge for you one of these days, Kyle. But listen, you guys all have an absolutely wonderful evening. I want to thank everybody who was in the comments. Awig, Paul, Bacleta, Elton, Passerby.
Hey, Chris, so you have to get on.
Chris had the comments on fire over on Facebook, because you can catch us on Facebook, you can catch us on YouTube. I'm ecumenical that way. So y'all have a great evening, and I'll see you around. Peace.
Ciao.